All right, all right, all right. Here we are.
We're
We're gonna get
back.
going.
We're
Ogden
back, baby.
Cinema Podcast. Yeah. There's a lot of great topics that we're gonna get to today, but actually Chet was asking me about writing, and I thought who better to talk about it than the man who's been spending a lot more time than this poor bastard has been. Like, I figured maybe you could give some tips and tricks,
Give
and
some
even
give some writing tips.
yeah.
Yeah. Uh well, let's see. I don't know, between you and I, what do we have? I've completed two feature screenplays. I've started probably 10. Here I'm like three completed, three or four.
Three completed, yeah.
Right. Um, Dozens of shorts, kind of a thing. And I don't know, one of the things that I'm really kind of trying to do now, like when Brandy and I worked on Convicts and Chocolate, her short film, which is a parody of Con Air and Forrest Gump, is that like some of the jokes and the gags that made it into the short weren't even written on the page. Um, and we kind of made them up on the fly, or they kind of came up later as we were like kind of shooting. And even my short film, Frankencock, like how I wrote the script and eventually what came out in the final edit is not necessarily the same. Like it's close, but it's not. Some of the beats are slightly different. Just kind of organically changed. And so I'm trying to keep that in mind as I'm doing the writing, is to not pay, because sometimes I'll um is not get too bogged down by, is it the exact right thing to say um at each sentence, because sometimes I'll I'll get like 40 pages into a screenplay thinking that, like, well, I don't know what else I'm going to write. I know where it's going to go, but maybe today I'll just do some edits or something like that, and I'll print out and I start writing. And then the next thing you know, I'm stuck in just those 40 pages and I didn't necessarily move forward. I didn't have any forward progress on it. Um, and so I'm trying to, with a new thing that I'm writing now, and trying to make sure that I just keep pressing forward, and we'll kind of go backwards and take a look at it when that first draft is done. But also at the same time, like, I think I want to just get right into production, and I'll figure out some of the other stuff as we go, because um, I already know it's going to change. So instead of doing 15 drafts, I might as well just make the drafts as we go and pump out the movie. So, a friend of mine, filmmaking friend of mine from LA, Carl Diamond, and I think he spoke with him a couple times before. Um, he had, about a year or so ago, turned me on to this book called The War of Art. The essence of the book is really just kind of like how um, there's a there's a thing. It's termed, basically creates a character called resistance, which is the thing that stops you every day when you go to write. And resistance can come in the form of like a loved one who's kind of always in your ear, or like like the laundry that's in the way, or the dishes, or the kids, or something like that. Like there's something that's going to be kind of in your way that's going to stop you from writing. And the muse is the work itself, and you have to treat the work like it's your muse, and kind of dedicate to it every single day, no matter what. Um, and so that's what I've been focusing on the last couple weeks, is 9 a.m. just sitting down, and it doesn't matter if I have the idea yet, but just start typing and kind of and give it a good hour, at least an hour, sometimes it maybe two, and in just 2 weeks, I've knocked out 40 pages on this new idea that I got for a feature screenplay. But also keeping in mind that I know that it's going to change. Like it's going to, because and I think we can just kind of move forward. Once I get to the end of it, we can just kind of start moving forward, and I'll just make the changes as we go. Not to say that it should be turned into like a Jurassic Park 3 kind of scenario or something like that, but
I
where
was
we're
gonna
like
say
shooting and we don't even have the script written yet. But like,
it's very Hollywood of you, though. Like we're gonna figure this out once we get a script. It's very Terrence Malick and maybe Michael Bay a little bit,
yeah.
but that's cool.
Well, no, well, like, so Brandy and I also, we went to Arizona, in November and we saw Larry David out there and they kind of gave examples of what like their screenplay writing looks like. And it's really like it's a paragraph of what the essence of the scene is because they know that they're going to improv all their comedy when they go to shoot it. So they kind of just they've got some footnotes written down and they move forward. Now those guys are extremely talented. So that's not me. But but I think that also I find that I write better the more I read, and I've been reading. There's a time where I didn't read very much in my life, and after the pandemic, I kind of refound that love for it. And so I read, and then I do two writing prompts. I have like one of those like dad journals that's like you give it to your kid later on and it has like these little prompts that are like what was like growing up or what were and so that they have like kind of like this journal about who you were or whatever. So I handwrite that and then I have there's another book I have is it just says I film shit and on the inside it's just blank pages. So I kind of diary what I do and I'm not a big diary kind of person, but I've been using that as kind of a writing prompt. I do it by hand. That's the warm up and then I write the screenplay. And so far the last couple of weeks it's been working out pretty good. So
I dig it. So for those who I've actually read this book in the past, I don't know if you know that I've read this book, but The War of Art's written by Stephen Pressfield, and I like it quite a bit as well. And I actually am aware of him because he wrote a lot of historical fiction novels that are really well done. One of them being The Gates of Fire, I believe is what it's called, which is about the Battle of Thermopylae and the 300 Spartans.
damn.
And really, really well done. He's got some books on Alexander the Great as well, I believe. But yeah, that one, it's funny. I've been thinking about dusting off The Artist's Way again too, for like gestating of ideas, right? Like sometimes having a
Hmm.
writing prompt helps. Um, I did a lot of, I mean, I listen to a lot of like any of us. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I follow a lot of blogs and journals and whatnot too, and
Hmm.
newsletters from filmmaking websites. And one of them was the Blacklist, and the Blacklist did a lot of really good seminars during the strike and during COVID. There was some really good stuff in there around writing and Judd Apatow and J.J. Abrams. Like, there's just some great writing tips out of there. One of them being, though, I think Judd Apatow, of all the people who early in life did not like as much as actually appreciate him now. Like, going back and watching This Is 40 and Knocked Up Now, I'm like, now that I've had a family, I'm like, resonates as much like the Paul Rudd, Leslie Mann scenes resonate completely different now that I've had kids where I'm like, that shit's actually funny. Like yeah, those things have actually happened. But he talked about like he wouldn't revise as he wrote. He would just write and just write and write and write. And then he'd get to the end and he would do all his revisions. But it was get this get the ideas on paper first and then massage it later instead of going back
Hmm.
and forth. I'll be honest, I'm not good at that. Like I tend to self-edit as I go along because for me, what I end up doing is I have to set it aside and like it's not my full-time job. So I may be hitting it a week later or a couple days later, and I might not be as fresh in my mind.
Hmm.
So I have to read what I wrote to get back in the headspace. And in doing so, I'm like, oh, I missed
So you
something.
said edit.
Yeah, and I tend to I always have.
Hmm.
Some of the people in the blacklist do the same thing, so there's no one size fits all. But in order to be productive, like I I think you're doing the right thing. But again, those tactics work for you and for I. Doesn't mean that there's not ways to do it that aren't what we're doing.
Hmm.
The War of Art is an awesome book. Um, and then Artist's Way is another one too. I was saying
Let's check that out.
yeah, the there's another. It's funny because in the artist's way, they talk about crazy makers, which is a conversation you and I have had before, and a topic we've had before in a previous life. But it's much like what you're talking about, right? Like the distractions and whatnot. And there have been days where I've taken off days off of work, or I have a day set aside, and I'm like, oh, sweet. I'm gonna do some writing today.
Hmm.
And in the past, a lot of times where I've done like, oh, I'll just do the dishes. Oh, and then I need to take the dogs for a walk, and then I need to. It's like you said, you'll do all those other things that aren't the thing, and then what happens is you're left with no time. And I think for me, part of the procrastination, part of the issue is like being my work desk being also my personal, like I
Hmm.
have a dual setup, right? I have my work desk and I have two monitors set up, and then I have my with the second monitor being a shared monitor, I can flip back and forth to my personal computer, but it has its own monitor too. And
Hmm.
it's really hard to be in this space after being in that space all week or all day and then going like, I've got fresh ideas.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting the final draft mobile, and the last couple of times I've had days off where I'm like, I'm doing nothing but writing today. I've
Hmm.
taken my iPad and my portable keyboard, gone into a Starbucks, and gotten out of my place so I could just sit and write.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes too, like some people like just talking to other writers and well, things like, how do you get started? To me, like I just start putting the fingers to the keys and let it flow out of me. And is it all awesome? No, like I said, I go back and self edit or revise as I go along. It's first draft's not the final, right?
Yeah.
But just putting in the work, I tend to find gets gets me the end result. Like you said, I've written three feature length films at this point. One of them that's been produced. I wrote for I wrote for a web series, like as the head writer, and I think it's been a minute since I've had to think about it, but I want to say I contributed more than seven scripts, and when I counted up all the pages that I'd done, I think it was over 300. So after I did that, I knew I could write my own feature film. Um, but just putting the work in to
Hmm.
get there. Um,
Well, it's so
what?
fine. I like lately I've been trying on a personal level, like my schedule's pretty has freed up quite a bit more than it had been in the past. And so but there was a time where in order to finish my screenplay for Married and Loving It, I stopped writing at night and instead I started waking up early
Mm,
and writing it then because I was finding that like by the time I get to the end of the night, I'm just done.
yeah,
And then the resistance, as we would say, is even harder because it's like you're tired and you kind of just want to watch a movie instead of write a movie.
yeah.
Um, and then um, and then the other thing is, there's been some times where I've done a lot of writing while also like having a cocktail about it. And at some point the words just start getting really jumbled, right? But if you write in the morning over coffee, it's a different experience in that sense too. Um, and so I'm trying to so like writing in the morning now, like I'm doing, is also part of that too, because it's over coffee instead of cocktails. But and I don't know, I just feel like I feel like I was telling my wife this the other day was just that like it's almost like when you don't exercise and you know you should have like the way you feel about yourself kind of in a sense is one thing, and I feel differently when I know that I've like cranked out the the hour of writing than doing these other mundane tasks, the dishes and walking the dog or whichever. I feel much I feel better. I feel more productive. I feel less bored, I guess, in a sense, because I'm going like I already know I knocked out like, you know, 3 to 4 pages of hard work in a sense. But you mentioned going to Starbucks. Can you write both alone and also at Starbucks? Does it matter to you the environment?
No, so one of the best for me is just having the headset, right? Like there's a couple things. One, I spent 11 years working in retail, so I learned how to tune out background noise. So I do like having something on in the background, and when I write, it really depends. Um, so when I write, I kind of like to be in a certain headspace, and so my music will influence me anyway. So I play a lot of music when I do it, and like I was writing one of the features I wrote is a musical, and so I would listen to a lot of music in the vein of that when I was doing it, and it helped get me, I don't know, just get that groove going, get in that headspace, or because I mean, I neither of us have made it to the big time, but I think about artists that I like that not emulate, but I'm inspired by. Scorsese being one,
I think,
Tarantino being another,
Chaz
and
would say it differently, buddy. We're yeah. Chaz says we are big time, homie. We've had a lot of couch warrior friends in our day. We are not them.
I mean, that is the war of art, putting the pen to paper. Um, no, but Tarantino, Scorsese, you think about music, it's such a big part. Like Tarantino will write and be like, it's this song, it's this specific song, right? Like he's got certain things
Yeah.
in mind. Leone was the same way. Like music influenced how like from what I've read, whether it's BS or not, like Good, the Bad, and the Ugly being examples, like he has the score ahead of time and he's
Hmm.
blasting it on set to know the breadth of the scene, right? The
Yeah.
spacing of it. And so I love music, and sometimes if I'm in a certain headspace, I won't be able to listen to, I can't have lyrics because
Yeah.
words are coming out of me, so I have a hard time
Yeah.
with that. And I'll put on like Coltrane or Miles Davis, like some jazz where it's just instrumental. There's nothing at stake, and so I can get into
Hmm.
a different headspace. But I do that. I can type here. I can type at Starbucks. I can type. I actually one of the days I was off, I went out to the beach. They have a little dock out near where I live, overlooking the Puget Sound. Not, eh, but overlooking the Puget Sound. And so I sat on the dock and just I cranked out like 5 pages while I sat there for a couple
Hmm.
hours, and it was, are all of them gold? No, absolutely not. But were they good? Yeah, they were good,
Hmm.
and it got me over what I needed to accomplish in that scene, and just being like sometimes part of it I feel like is it's the same, to use what you were talking about, like working out. To me, like the gym is the same thing. Um, I have weights at the house. You know how often I touch them? Rarely. But if I go to the gym, I work out, even
Yeah.
though it costs money. It's because it's that commitment, like getting
Hmm.
out, getting to the thing, and then you do it.
And
And the
then do it.
same with
Yeah.
the, yeah, same with the writing. If I'm gonna write at home, I won't write in this office. I'll actually
Hmm.
take my iPad a lot of times and just go sit at my kitchen table and start cranking it out there
Yeah.
because the it's the change of pace, and it's the
Uh-huh.
thing at that point.
Yeah. I stopped. So I've stopped writing in this room as well. I'm now writing in the kitchen, and I don't mind. I don't mind writing at Starbucks. It doesn't bother me. I do know there's. I don't know how they are out your way. There's a trend out here with Starbucks where it's a club now. Like the music is just like constantly like and it's loud too. Like it's really loud. Um, Somewhat distracting, but trying to find a way with that. But one of the things that I've also been doing, new habit is I'll leave my phone in the other room, and then I turn off the internet on my computer. So because I have a Mac, so and I have an iPhone, so any text message goes to both
Sure.
and whatnot. Um, but that's another thing I've been trying to do is like, do a little bit of the social media stuff when you first wake up and you're kind of like, just kind of still getting up and maybe having a little bit of coffee or whatever. But then I set that shit in the other room, my phone, and then also just shut off the internet. And that gives me kind of like the like nobody's kind of gonna bother me now. And I can't bother myself because
Sure.
I have a tendency to over I did B2B sales for 14 years, and then I probably have made, if you figure 30 to 40 dials a day, a couple hundred, so that accrues to like what, 200, 300 dials a week. And you do that for 14 years. So I've probably put in, however many thousands of sales calls. And almost 90% of the time, I don't know what it is. I got this nervous tissue was while it's ringing, I open up Yahoo News. I don't know why. I still was a habit. I started when I first started working at where I was working and like it just so like the phone will ring and I open up a new tab to look at Yahoo News while the person's like answering the phone saying hi, and I'm going like hey, and I go into the into the dialogue that we have. And so if that's the reason. So for me, it's like I got to turn off the internet so that I not because otherwise my not nervous tish, but my boredom will suddenly go like I wonder what's on Facebook, or
Oh yeah.
um, or even like if I don't know how to like so for instance I'm writing a thing this guy gets bit by a snake and I was like I don't know how to I've never been bit by a snake and I've never used a snake biting kit, so I started like Googling it, and it's almost like it'd be best if I just don't even Google it. I just assume and just write whatever I think could happen and then figure that out later.
Yeah.
Like when we're doing the rewrite, we're saving it till closer to production. Go, what does that look like? And allowing it to change. You don't really need to write down step for step in the screenplay. You can just go. You just know that character fixes himself. I don't know, but but then at the same time with those kind of notes like that, I don't know, what kind of festival awards I'll be winning when I'm like when I'm leaving myself. I don't know right now. Fuck this. I'll figure it out. No, it's inside the screenplay, but
I mean, I often leave myself notes. Like, that's part, like, I'll leave myself, like, if I'm wrapping up and I'm like, I have a feeling, because I don't know if you do. Again, everybody does it differently. Like, I'll write down notes. Like, I used to do it in a moleskin. I still have my moleskins around, but honestly, most of the time I do it on my phone, right? Like anybody else. And I have notepads, and I'll be like, ideas for like obsession, my script obsession, right? So I have
mhm,
ideas in there and whatnot. But a lot of times I'll reference to it, but I just let myself create it. Like I write it down to get it out so that I have it. I'll revisit it usually beforehand, but before I start writing. But when I'm in the act of writing, what I'll do is once I get towards the end, I'm like, okay, I kind of don't know what I'm going to do, but I need to wrap it up, and I'll start blocking out like just kind of a scene description or how it's going to set up the next couple of scenes with any ideas I've got that I don't have time to flesh out. There's just sometimes, I mean, again, like working, family life, all the other stuff. Like even if you put a couple hours in, like eventually it ends.
mhm.
So if I have like someone a killer idea, I'm like, all right, I'm running out of time. I gotta do it. I'll just start pouring all that out, and then it's at the very bottom of my scripts. When I load it up again, all those ideas, I use it as my framework. Okay, so today I guess I'm working on this scene and I'll try to
Mhm.
flesh out that idea based on what I had. But I don't know if that's similar to what you were talking about. You were talking about it and
Mhm.
that got me thinking.
Yeah, yeah, I'll do that. If I know I'm going to stop, but I know what I want to say next or what I'm gonna think, I'll put it's at the bottom of the screenplay, but it's just asterisks. Here's what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
And um, with this one, and as much as I'm talking about, God damn it, I hope I make it to the end. So I can say that all the tips and tricks were the right ones. Uh, is I'm realizing like, oh shit, the character should have. If you write a gun, like you can't just you don't want the grenade just to pop out of nowhere. You can want to like kind of set it up that they found it somehow beforehand, right? Or at least that's how I feel. So like instead of going back into the screenplay and deciding where that is, have left myself a note that basically on the second pass when the whole thing's completed, I gotta add a map and a grenade along the way to
Yeah.
kind of like set it up. But I'm trying to really hard to stop myself from going backwards into it. Um, about 2 years ago, it's sitting right next to me on my desk here. I wrote probably 60 pages on a script that it was going to be kind of like my version of Rashomon in a sense, and kind of like a murder mystery that's told in four different stories, four different kind of like tales or whatever. I hadn't quite fleshed out like enough of the backstory or enough of the like puzzle pieces to make it work. And so where I got lost is I started going back into the screenplay from the beginning, and then of course I'm rewriting every line as I go, and I'm
Yeah,
doing it by hand because I tend to print out. There's probably a term for it, but the way I see things on the computer and the way I see things on an actual printed page are two different ways. And so I find a lot of mistakes, and I have to that I wouldn't have seen for some reason on the computer. And so I use my so I'm using a pen. So now I have to retype it, right? And then I basically just got lost into the whole thing, and I never got quite to the end. Never finished the screenplay, and that's one of a handful of examples of times where I fucked that up and didn't finish the screenplay because I ended up writing draft three before ever finishing draft one along the way.
sure.
But man, that's the writing
Well,
tips from indie filmmakers.
and a couple things like it's interesting because you do this, not that, and whatnot. And for me, like I have a bad habit, and I know I do, is if I get stuck in a place in a script, like I kind of put it to the side a little bit and let my mind work it out while I move on to like I will go where the inspiration takes me. So if I'm working on a different script idea or whatnot, and that's where I feel the most energy, I'll put it in there. And I know that's a
Mhm.
terrible habit, but it was interesting when I went to Slam Dance and just some of the calls, like some of them, they're like, nope, once you start a script, you just keep going until that one script is done. Like, no, nothing else. Like, until, in fact, it's not only from like idea and planning it out until you've revised it and you've got a final draft, you don't move on to anything else. It's like, well, that's a little rough for the old duder here, but,
When you got 200 new ideas coming every day, in the
I mean,
shower alone.
there's that, but I mean, juggling ideas for all the different screenplays too. Like,
Hmm.
and how about this? If I made zero times to the finish line with the script, like, sure. But another one of the guys was talking about, he's like, when you get stuck, just move on to another idea. It's like, this guy's my spirit animal right here, and this guy had written for Jessica Jones and several other TV shows and screenplays that he had produced and punched up. Like, guy made a living doing it, so
Hmm.
either way works at the end of the day.
Yeah,
And again, like what we're sharing is just tips for those who are interested in listening, like Jazz, and
like jazz.
that's where it goes.
So do you
So
map out do you map out the whole story before you sit down and write? Like how much pre-planning do you do? Or and I say that because like the Thomas Harris's book, Red Dragon, the first Hannibal Lecter book, and I've actually read all of them. I even
that's
read
awesome.
Hannibal Rising. The book's actually not too bad. I don't know about the movie. I never saw that one on the movie, but um but like he kind of like there's or like even interviews I've seen with Tarantino, sometimes though they try to, it's like how when they're writing the characters are taking them away, or they kind of like the story finds itself going in this direction or something like that. And I don't know, I know with Married and Loving It, I certainly mapped out what the major five scenes were going to be because it's really just a five-scene movie. And I've done that a couple of times. Do you pre-plan what you're going to do, or do you let it, where it's going to end, where the movie's eventually going to end, and you just allow it to tell the journey as you get there? Or like, what's your process?
Yeah, and I don't know it's a good one, but so part of what I've traditionally done, it's like I'll have these grand ideas. I write as many notes and kind of think on it, right? If I'm not ready, like as I'm planning out, and like, oh, it should be, and that we should have a scene that does this because of that, and this, that, and the other. Generally, I'll have a beginning and an end in mind when I set out on the journey. The middle can get a little rough for me and not as fleshed out, and that's where I just let inspiration take me.
Hmm.
But usually, like I said, though, like what'll happen is um, the notes. that I leave sometimes will then like take me in a completely different direction. But to me, like that's part of like pre-planning, right? Like that I'm working on A and I can kind of see where B and C are. And so I type out as much of that as I can and keep going. And I may have ideas in other places, right? And in Notepad and whatnot. And just keep fleshing and working it out. But like my musical, for example, I wanted to do it about brothers who are rock stars and they had this big band. And now one of them's out on the road. And yes, I know it's kind of like it's I mean, it's Crazy Heart and Tender Mercies. Like there's flavors of that, and that's happened, but happened in real life a bunch of times.
Hmm.
But I wanted to do a musical about musicians and kind of go on that journey. And originally, like my thought was, I'm gonna give it the indie ending, which is I've done a few times and or set out to do a couple times, and then I've started going like, it's a fucking cop out. I'll be honest, like it's a cop out. I knew better. Like my first feature, Truth About Us. Like I like so in some ways as the stage play, I'd probably commit to it that way, but I always wanted it to get like the two main characters are having a conversation, and then there would be a question from the wife to the husband, and then as the husband goes to say something, I would be like, cut to black, because it's an indie ending in a sense, as much as I
Hmm.
give grief about that. But what did I do? I went out and filmed an actual ending for it, and I like it. Um, and I not just like it, like I am beyond happy with the ending I filmed.
Yeah.
I'm glad I didn't go that direction. So when I got to the end of this script, the way I've always had it was like you go on this journey, right? Guy was on top, had it all. He's living almost a low life type life. And he has a chance to get his band back, and then his brother and him start fighting again because of fucking course they would, because it's family, right? And as he's about to go on stage, they've had yet another fight, and it's the reunion that everybody's been waiting for, right? And so what does he do? And originally I was like, I was gonna go, they had that fight, he's standing off, and his brother's out there introducing him, this, that, and the other, and he's on the side. And then as they say his name, the crowd would cheer and we'd cut to black. I went, again, that's a fucking cop out. Like I I don't know. As I was doing the journey of writing it, I didn't quite love where it was at, and then I like the ending. I gave it a more satisfying conclusion. It ends in the same situation, different outcome, right? And I
Hmm.
think Truth About Us, coming back to that, I mean, the revision process and what you're talking about with your upcoming feature, which you can't wait to read when you're done, by the way. Um, I had a hard time. I knew how the end, how I wanted the ending, but I always kind of had. I already had like a mid movie like peak. I didn't know how to kind of bring it back again and do another peak, and I felt like I wrote myself in a hole where it's just kind of like, oh, I'll figure it out. And we got to the point where we were shooting the thing, and I went, man, I don't love what I have here, and I don't know what else to do. And I went, well, uh, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna improvise and we're gonna do it all in one take. So there's no because I was on a skeleton crew. I truly had one cameraman, and I think I ran sound and directed because that's what it was. But like I got to it and I just told the actors like I want you guys to improvise. One was both were fantastic, but Mike Solares, if anybody ever has a chance to work with him, professional beyond belief.
Uh-oh.
Pamela is as well.
Yeah.
But Pamela, she was fantastic, and at that time, I mean, this is years ago now too. She was much more to the page. Mike can go off script, and I remember having to bring him back in a bunch of times too. But Mike's sense of improv was amazing, and when I say Pam was on much more to the page. She knocked it out of the park because they
Mm.
saved my movie by improvising together.
Yeah.
And I watch it. I've watched it a million and one times, and there's times where I can kind of feel them half searching. And having been there, knowing what's going on, and knowing that there is no script for that moment, I'm a little probably harsher on it. I think if you watched it not knowing, it feels more natural. Like when you're having a fight, it's not just like rapid
It's not,
fire dialogue.
yeah.
Sometimes there is a pause. Sometimes you
Hmm.
are thinking about how you're trying not to burn your world to the
Hmm.
ground. And so it works really well.
Yeah.
And that happens naturally. And with like, there's a safety net of the entire movie, right? But they took an idea and then I saved it almost till I think it was our last full day of I think it was our last full day of shooting. So we did 6 days of principal photography and 2 days, 2.5 days of reshoots. But that 6 day shooting, I saved it so they knew their characters, right? They'd lived in their characters by that point, so that when we went to improvise, they had a sense of who they were and how they brought them to life, um, and really made it a thing. So I don't like. I hope I didn't ramble too much, but
No,
that's
no, I think what it actually kind of brings us back around full circle to the beginning of the conversation. As I was saying that like getting to that point where it's like, well, the script is about as good as it's gonna get. Might as well move forward and organically while you're making the movie, certain things are just gonna change. And that was a moment where you kind of just took it. It was like, I don't know, you have an idea of what the ending is gonna be, but you haven't written it and you're just saying, "Hey, why don't you guys improv for a minute?" And from that, actually, what's also was that you didn't mention is that the what one of the things that got improved is actually changed the title of the entire film
yeah, yeah,
because of a line that Mike said, and so then all of a sudden it just like clicked. It was like, but he's been living this character with you because he was you guys were close to the end of shooting the whole movie and I used to have a crazy maker in my life, so I wasn't able to be, unfortunately, to my regret, I wasn't there for a lot of the shooting of the movie, but I was there for that day, and I was there for the improv part. But it's just interesting how, like I was saying, kind of coming back around, you didn't have the scene written, and it's almost like you couldn't have written it. And then at the same time, in the improv, you find your title, or you find
yeah.
a title that you liked better than your original title, and then went and then went for it. So I think that's part of also maybe that's the filmmaker's side of it. You know, as a writer, we sure we put all this stuff down, but like as a filmmaker, when we go shoot it, we just know that somehow this is because we all like what you write, what you film, and what you edit and show people are all different versions of one idea.
Yeah.
Um, and and so things change. When you're the person who's writing it and also the person who's going to promote it at the end is going to the festival and you can see like it's like I didn't write that page, they wrote that page on the day, camera in front of our face. So
Saved my movie. I can't speak highly enough of both of them. I think one like since we're talking about writing, I read an interesting article this week. I don't know if you saw it as well, and I didn't prep you for this beforehand, but did you see that Paul Schrader admitted to using ChatGPT to get ideas and was playing around with it? Did you see that?
no.
Yeah. I read a thing, and people are like
Interesting.
reacting to it negatively. They're like, "Oh no," but he was like, "Yeah, man, it's incredible." He's like, "It's wild." Like, instead of searching for ideas, I just said, "Give me a movie in the style of Quentin Tarantino around this,"
Mhm.
and then he's like, "The idea is fully fleshed, and then you could take it and run with it." I was like,
Yeah.
that is not an insignificant person to be speaking about that. So before I go
Mhm.
on any further, like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I'm interested to hear.
uh well, there's layers to it, right? So like, so obviously Paul Schrader, he's obviously written. I mean, when the guy who like wrote Taxi Driver, like like you really can't give him. There was obviously no GPT back when he was doing that.
Right.
So on one hand, it's kind of like if he wants to use it now, like the guy's already come up with a solid set of ideas, so let him go. And there used to be a time though where I never bought one, but I looked at them a lot. But you'd go to the writing section of a bookstore, like a movie making section, and they would have books that were like, I remember seeing one that was like, the book was actually two halves, the top half and the bottom half, and there was a bunch of flip cards. And you basically like you would randomly flip to one thing, and the top of it would say like it's a alien abduction movie, and then the second half, depending where you landed, it would be like with a 70s detective wearing a leather jacket, like something like that. And so you're kind of given the prompt, and then you would, and that was so it was like the idea was to do that, or it would give you ideas to write. So you'd write now an alien abduction movie with a 70s detective or something like that. So is ChatGPT like if he's only using it for the prompt, like so he's only using it for the prompt. If he's using it for the whole fucking screenplay, I don't know about all that, but I don't know that like really like at this point like the guy wrote Taxi Driver and Rolling Thunder and it's like I don't have IMDb on me right now, but like
I
I
mean,
mean yeah,
but he's still
he's
doing
certainly
it. He did
yeah.
First Reformed a few years ago, I believe, and then he's got
Oh
a
yeah.
brand new one out. Like
Yeah.
he's still he's still doing it.
Yeah.
So, and hats off to him. Help, that's
hmm
amazing.
I mean, and there's some yeah, it's tough in the I've had a few other interviews and stuff like that where we've chatted about it, and I don't think I think that at the end of the day, like a person who's like you or I, who were like inherently like being an artist is just kind of in our soul. Like we will always want to create, and it doesn't matter if you have a microwave. Like if you want to be a chef, you're gonna be a chef. And so there are some things that are kind of interesting. Like when you see something that's like, what if like Kurosawa directed a Batman movie or something like that, and it's like photo real, like kind of a look to it. It it's interesting to see because it's a concept that perhaps somebody didn't quite think of, and the images that it pops out and kind of makes you wish that maybe there was that movie. Um, but at the same time, like I think creative people are gonna be creative, and
Oh yeah.
AI or not AI, like we're gonna continue to write and things like that. And so I didn't know that about Paul Schrader, but he's also he's a very like uh good writer, director as well, opinionated for sure. Like
Controversial.
and, and kind of a dick when it comes to the opinion, which is fine, which is fine. I don't it doesn't stop me from wanting to go see the next like Paul Schrader movie.
I was
So
curious what your thoughts were. Like, so
yeah.
it's interesting because I've heard a lot, like, there's a lot of like fear about it. Like, I'm part of other writers groups, and they're like, ugh. I went to one though. It's the Northwest Screenwriters Guild, and they had somebody actually come on that was talking about the benefits of it. And I also got some feedback from Slam Dance and worked with one of their script consultants as well. And what was interesting to me is they were like, what you should do is like, I don't, there's so many generative AIs, right? But what there was like, use it to help you revise. And like honestly, like you know how it is, like you were just talking about it. Sometimes when you're looking at the screen trying to edit, you're missing the errors because
Uh,
it's just not there. But I used it like so some of them recommended it. I even tried it and just used it to go like help me find the grammatical errors in this or the punctuate like and I was like, man, I'm so blind to that. And it helped me fix those things. And then it was like one of the recommendations was like use it to help you get a character profile or sketch of your character so that you can make them more consistent if you're having a hard time doing it yourself. I thought that was interesting. Like, use it to help you, like, use the power of what you've already got on the page and all the
Hmm.
stuff you've already written, all the notes and whatnot, to then help you come up with a character profile so you could get a better idea of that. And what I think the Screenwriters Guild, the that I was listening to, they were talking actually about like I think they were using Claude, and one of the things that they were advocating for was like the reason why they used that one was that you could actually dialogue back and forth with it. It was like, so give me a character profile of this person, and it would give you
Interesting.
the output, and you could go, why do you think they did that? Or what would
Hmm.
you fix about like this scene? Why would you make that choice? And you could have like kind of a dialogue. And I think it's interesting. Like it's a at the end of the day, it's gonna be here to stay. Like it's in so many aspects of our lives, right? Like I mean, hell, Google's advertising Gemini, like get it, and it'll
Yeah.
help you do whatever. It's on TV. Um, but I think that's it. It does help. I mean, I won't lie. One of the things I hate about like I hate summarizing my work and summing it up.
Hmm.
Sometimes, like I'm like I did the thing, like that's what the thing is.
Yeah.
When I had to do my synopsises and stuff and log lines, I used
Hmm.
ChatGPT. Like I'd gotten some initial feedbacks from different screenwriting competitions I submitted to, and I was like, this is okay, but I popped it
Yeah.
in ChatGPT and went like, can you give me some variations on this log line? Um, Based on the information provided, and I ended up working it too. Like it wasn't like I
Yeah.
went, oh, that's it. Like I took like the best of I Frankensteined it together and put the best of all of them together to get my log line and tighten it up and
Hmm.
whatnot. Same with my synopsis, but it saved me time to like what's more important to me, like having the synopsis or spending that time writing,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Well,
my thoughts on it.
it's it's a new technology, and we've seen this even in the industry that you and I are aspiring to being more involved in. Is, you know, when television comes out, it's kind of like a new thing, and how does the industry adapt? And then, or even color or sound or CGI, and yes, it's gonna have its moments of drawbacks for sure. I think I didn't see the Madam Spiderweb movie, but I hear that it was a ChatGPT like script, and we all saw where it went, you know. And so I think that it's okay to have it's okay to have a, it's a new tool. It's just a new hammer. Like if you had a nail gun, would somebody like sit there and tell you, like somebody with a hammer sit there and tell you, like, give you shit because you're using now an air powered like nail gun? And at the end of the day, we're still gonna create. Um, in this case, with like, like you said, you Frankenstein like four different logins or what, or log lines or whatever, right? Those are hard to write. And is it any different than if we just sat down with 20 of us and looked at it all together? Like, and the thing is, you just skip past the 20 people trying to meet with 20 people to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and but at the end of the day, like, you wrote the story, and especially even grammatically, like my grammar sucks. Like as the years go by, like my spelling sucks and my grammar sucks, and so um uh y- you know when we type, does the computer tell me that I misspelled it? Yeah, it does. So is it any different than saying, hey, here's the essence of what my story is, give me a log, like 10 different log lines to choose from. So at the end of the day, also, like, AI can only become as good as we give it. Um, so it's really just based upon our own inputs. All at the end, also. So
I think of it too, like you're talking about all the different technological revolutions. Like think about CG, right? You remember when like Terminator 2 comes out and Jurassic Park, and it's like an additive bonus, right? Like it's really
Hmm.
well done. And then it was
Yeah.
like, oh, it's cheaper. We can do everything. And then every early 2000s, like late 90s, all that really terrible CG was like
Hmm.
pushed out there. And some movies are just unwatchable at this point, but it
Hmm.
became people used it instead of as a tool, they used it as the thing.
As the
And
thing. Yeah.
I think the same thing applies with this. Like I don't know if you there was some controversy over it. I don't know if you saw the Coca. I watch more live sports and stuff, but there's a Coca-Cola ad that came out, and they're like, "Oh, it's created by AI." And I won't lie, like when you watch it, yeah, it looks like it's created by AI.
Hmm.
It's soulless, like, but the some of the technologies that are coming out are incredible. Um, the Tyler, I mean, this is a couple years ago, so things may have changed, and I didn't follow up on it. So I apologize if I'm spreading misinformation, but Tyler Perry at one point was going to open up like brand new studio. He's going to build a studio,
Hmm.
and then he saw what I think Adobe was doing, and then after he saw what was coming with generative AI and video, he canceled these scrapped the plans or at least postponed them, which
Hmm.
makes sense because I was like, "Are you serious?" And I went and looked up what they did, and it was like the early video I saw was like all these photorealistic videos of like a person riding a bike and going through town, and then when it panned out, they had a light bulb or a balloon for their head, but it's photorealistic, and it is. I was like, yeah, well, I mean, why would you spend $150 million doing
Yeah.
that when you could spend $1 million on server space and start prepping for previs, um, and save yourself. Like, think about like
Yeah.
storyboarding. I'm terrible at storyboarding, but if
Hmm.
I could do a shot diagram and feed it into Chat GPT and tell it what I wanted, think of the storyboard capabilities. Like that's
Yeah.
like a tool rather than anyway.
Yeah.
Not to rabbit hole. I thought it was interesting. I read that this week, and there's been so much fear around it. I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Either that or Paul Schrader's like fucking with us, but like he just wants to see the internet go up in storm, whatnot. But um, again, it's hard to kind of argue with the guy who already like 40, 50 years, 40 years ago, whenever Taxi Driver came out. Well, obviously it was probably 50 years ago, but like when he was typing on a typewriter. I mean, we have the like you and I have been chatting about writing this whole time. It's like I've never written a full screenplay on a typewriter. Like I do it on a computer where I mentioned I even have to shut off the internet. Like it formats it for me. Like if I use Final Draft, so if I hit enter twice, like it asks me like, do you want a transition or do you want a dialogue? Like it, and you just hit the button and it. So
Is it
I
bad that I'm
mean,
looked into buying a typewriter? I legit have thought about it. Um,
now that I've said it out loud, part of me goes like, well, Ryan, like that's you should. That'd be a helpful thing. I want to write my next screenplay, and I haven't gotten there yet. But I was a couple years ago. Brandy and I were out. My wife Brandy, we went to Warner Brothers Studios, did the Warner Brothers tour, and she bought me this
oh, that's
notebook
awesome.
here, and even had them do the embroidery on my name. And I want to do a thing where I actually write um, the screen. I want to write a screenplay, but in the blank pages of this book. So I want to write it by hand first, and then write it, and then do the second draft being typed and whatnot. And it's been a while since
Actually,
I wrote a screenplay by hand. But yeah.
there's a I at work got a gift card, and one of the things I could get was there's like this. I like Moleskin anyway, but there's like this nifty Moleskin that's like kind of like a rocket notebook where it allows you to write via pen, whatever special pen it is, into the notebook, but then it also will save a digital version of it somewhere. Now, I haven't gotten it yet, so when it gets here, I'll tell you how it is. But I kind of am looking forward to writing my, like handwriting everything out again. to
No, yeah, that's cool. That's very cool.
yeah. But oh, there's another. I did another piece of homework based on our last based on our last session and last podcast. We talked about Nosferatu. I went back and watched Lighthouse.
Oh,
Have
cool.
you had a chance to see that movie?
No, I saw it was on HBO Max, I think, and I wanted to start it the other night, but it was fairly late, and I just kind of get the impression, like having seen The Northman and Nosferatu, you get the movie's kind of pacey. Watching it at
Yeah.
night is I'm just gonna fall asleep, and not because of the movie, but because it's late, and
Yeah.
and it's trying to do all of its setup and its emotions and stuff like that, and I'm just gonna be like my eyes are gonna close. So I think I started the accountant, and I made it like 4 minutes in and fell asleep. So
I like The Accountant, so I
okay,
like
well,
I like good
if,
popcorn film.
if it's good, I'll go back and I'll start it again.
I mean, they're making a second one. Like
I
I,
saw that,
I,
yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. Like all the grief that Ben Affleck gets, like has he been in some dog shit movies? Oh, absolutely. But does he deserve to be hated like he is? No, not even a little bit. Like dude's made some pretty good movies. I'll say this: The Accountant, popcorn film. So if you're going in going like I like a lot of people really liked it. I like it as a popcorn film. I wouldn't go in expecting the town, but yeah, it's worth a watch. Um, Lighthouse, though, man, that's your type of movie.
Yeah.
And I read an article from him, Robert Eggers, as well. And forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong, Bob. I just I found out your work, and nobody ever. I just read about it, and nobody ever says your name. Uh, oh, Lighthouse, man, like just like Nosferatu, just like Northman, just like masterfully shot. He did it in Academy ratio, so it's full frame, and it's in black and white. And man, it's yeah, you forget like how tasty a modern movie can look in black and white. Like Guillermo del Toro, I think went back and redid it with, I think Nightmare Alley. Like I want to say he just recently remastered it in black and white. Um, but The Lighthouse, man, that's your type of movie, man. It is great. It is a slow burn at times. But I was reading an article with him, and the reason why I brought it up, not just because Nosferatu, he was saying like, and I thought it was an interesting comment, and I want to get your reaction to. I know you haven't read the article, but I want to get your reaction to the comment, and then I'll piggyback on it. But he talked about how he doesn't want to film movies in the set in a modern time period. Went, oh yeah, I guess none of your movies are really. He said
Yeah.
it's not interesting to me, but he talked a lot about like first visual as his movies are and whatnot. Like
Hmm.
he talks a lot about like shooting him in a period actually frees him because then he doesn't have to think about what the clothes would be. He would just reference what they would be, and then that's the clothes or the chairs or whatnot. Like
Hmm.
he'll do his research on what his like period accurate whatever is, and then that's how it comes into being. I thought that was interesting for a person who's so visual. When you look at his movies, they're just visually stunning.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't dig into like that level of detail. I thought that was interesting, but I think more than anything, I'm interested like how do you feel about that? Because I think that's a very interesting comment. Like I'm not interested in like he said I'll watch movies that are made and set in
Yeah.
present time, but I'm not interested in making one.
Um, I don't know. I think some people, everybody has a different flavor of ice cream that's their favorite. Um, and uh, so for like me, I tend to favor movies that are set. Like I love a good contemporary crime drama. So like that's probably why Heat is one of my favorite movies.
Sure.
But then one of my other favorite movies is Casino, and that's not necessarily set at contemporary time, but it's not too far back though, from the time the movie was made. It was made in the 90s, set in the 70s. Um, but So that's not my thing, but if that's, it feels like it's probably his flavor. Like, if you look at Steven Spielberg's movies, there's a good chain of them that have Nazis in them somewhere, or they're set and just in around about that time period. Uh, two of the or three of the four Indiana Jones movies that he did. Obviously Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan. Uh, he just kind of has a thing for like that time period. Then that really attracts him, and so if if Robert Eggers is that, maybe he has a really good costume team like that he's working with, so he just can trust that they're going to do whatever it is that they do and whatnot. I mean, I it's not my favorite time period, so like I it's nice seeing his movies in the sense because they're not. I was actually griping with Brandy about this the other day. I'm kind of trailing. I'm not finishing any of my sentences. I just start a sentence, then I move on to the next idea. But I was telling Brandy how like I get really bothered. Like I like watching theater stuff, but when it's always like, well now, good sir, stop here, hitherto now. Blah, blah, blah. It's like did they really speak like that in that same kind of like that almost what seems like comical kind of vernacular of speak and whatnot in the old days, and so that time period is not good for me. But I did like Nosferatu because nobody says any of that shit. Like like Willem Dafoe's not like, come sit by the fire, I'll grab you a cup of tea. Woo-hoo, sure. And they do that shit. Like they didn't do any of that. So
Yeah, but
it's
in Nosferatu though, they do have a different way of speaking about him. Like it
yeah,
does feel it feels of a different time
yeah.
without being over the top.
Hmm. Yeah, it's not over the top, and it's like the same. It's like the way that like when you play a villain, it's like, are you playing it as a, is it feel like a comic book villain in a bad comic book movie? Or is it like, is it Thanos? Or is it like Treat Williams in Phantom? Like, like which one of the two types of way of playing it? And we did a thing about a year ago. Our good friend Madison is working on a video game, and I'm playing like the villain character, and I'm a terrible actor. So, of course, when I do it, I do the fucking com the comic booky villain and whatnot that I'm complaining about. So I'm aware that if when it gets seen, it's a double standard because I'm complaining because I did the thing that I'm complaining about. But um, but I don't know how else to do it. But I do see a lot of theater stuff, and I just don't know that everybody was walking around, oh, hokey, doing this kind of shit all the time and whatnot. Because, or I give the movie Link and my Spielberg a lot of shit, but at least like it was toned down on the four score and seven, it toned it down just a little bit into like what reality sounds like sometimes.
It'll be interesting to see what you think of Lighthouse then, because
but
it's
but
set in I think late 1800s, early
yeah.
1900s, and there is definitely a different cadence and way of talking, even between the two characters. And
Mhm.
it's very of a time, but to me, I don't feel like it's over the top. But it does, like Willem
Yeah.
Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is fucking awesome in that movie. And Robert Pattinson, for as much as
Hmm.
I did not like him the
When he
Twilight
first hit
era
the
when he
scene.
came
Yeah.
out, I was not interested.
Hmm.
I become more and more impressed with him as time goes on, and yeah, yeah,
Well, so and not to maybe so it's not necessarily it's not the dialogue or the choice of words. It's what I feel is hokey pokey about how the dialogue is delivered. And if you're watching like The Music Man or
sure.
something like that, it's it's it maybe someone can articulate it for me, chat, like you let me know. It's like if you're watching like you go back into the 1950s post World War II, just cherry pick a Hollywood movie and contrast that to a new wave cinema French film or something like that. And it's just the way that because they're like when they're making movies in that era, they're kind of like their towns and their cities have been destroyed. They're making these movies post World War II, and they don't have the same fluff that Hollywood movies do, or something like that. And I think it's just the fluff of the way that the dialogue is said sometimes in those what I feel is I would say is hokey pokey again, kind of a way of saying it. So and I've seen a couple clips of the Lighthouse, and it kind of feels like in those some of those moments, it's almost like is there a bit of is he being kind of comical and purposely that way? And I go like, well, if you're doing it purposely to fuck with people, like I completely understand that. I can get behind that. So,
Uh, I think you should check it out because I mean I think of it as like the tie it fits the characters because I know what you're talking about and I feel like just to piggyback off what you're talking about like movies in the I think the 50s and the 40s where it's like to me it's like antebellum South and Victorian era like England like
yeah,
they would be almost interchangeable those
yeah,
two like if you're on the set for one film like you're probably filming the other type of film tomorrow and it's the same vibe because that's
hmm
where that's where the flavor of the day was and whatnot but I totally I think I know what you mean and that stuffy prim proper thing it's not my favorite either I tend not
hmm
to like I mean
Stuffy
yeah
and
it's
prim proper. I like that. Yeah, it's
yeah
that shit.
yeah
It's like the worst part of The Searchers. Fantastic film. There's a section in the movie that's about the nephew and him getting married to this chick, and they're fucking just dancing around in circles and shit, and there's in those like old timey dresses that they would wear. And it feels like 20 minutes of probably what was like a 5 minute segment of the movie, but it feels like it goes on forever from my perspective. And I'm going like, yeah, like so back to Finding Natalie Wood with the Indians. Like, let's go back to the racist revenge story that we were on, like, and not this hokey pokey shit we're doing.
I don't see. I just watched it again with the kids not too long ago, and I won't lie. Like, I kind of feel like thinking about the time when that movie was made. Like, man, movies, man, that movie's just amazing. But like I kind of think you have to have those moments that are hokey pokey because like the audience at that time is not ready for a brutal, grim
Yeah.
Western, and the subject matter of that movie is pretty bleak. You know what I mean? But they they get around it by like having all these other moments. I mean, having John Wayne be the main actor in that, like it's perfect because he is so charismatic. And when like he's sitting there joking and it's hokey pokey a little bit, he's joking with them, and then as soon as they mention the Indians, like man, how that dude turns cold blooded and racist is incredible. Like, I mean, I was having to explain to my kids like all right, these things aren't okay. It was of that time, but like you think about when that movie is made and when it came out, like I think to a certain extent you probably had to in order to get it made and for the audience to
hmm
even accept
Yeah.
it, right? Because if it's just a brutal like now, now it would just be bleak as all get out. And in fact, like the ending of that movie filmed now, John Wayne doesn't save her, man. Like it's against his character and what we've set up the entire time where he's like, oh, this kid's a mutt. No good. Like the Indian half overpowers the white half. And it's like, dude, it's just John Wayne. Just, oh, man. Like, you don't have to go after Marlon Brando's girlfriend on stage, man. It's okay. But, yeah, it's very much of it's very much of a time, but I feel like probably to get that movie specifically made, you probably have to have those hokey pokey moments. And it's interesting to
Mhm.
like think about the censorship that was going on in the Hollywood system
Yeah.
and whatnot. But I don't want to detract too much. Like I hear what you're saying. I all I was trying to say is like for those who haven't, if you love Nosferatu, go back and check out The Northman and check out The Lighthouse. Like what I'm digging with every new movie of his that I watch is like it's like Denis Villeneuve. Like they're so fresh in
Hmm.
genre, really, of each one. And like I said, Lighthouse, he films it in Academy ratio and black and white and has its own vibe to it. And it is, yeah, it's just awesome. Like uh, I love it. I love his visual style. I love his use of shadows and lighting. Man, you'll dig it when you get around to. I don't want to talk it up too much, but I'm interested to see how you feel about it once you get a chance to check it out. But every like A24, the stuff that studio is putting out is is top notch. Like I like what they're
Hmm.
doing. Like I think
Yeah.
Iron Claw was my favorite movie, not of this last year, but the year before. Like
Hmm.
for dumb wrestling movie, like
I started that one. I didn't finish it all the way. Um, but did watch a fuck me, what's the title? Nick Cage movie, and he is a college professor that for some reason he starts ending up in people's dreams. And it starts out
Zen
like really,
scenario.
yeah, I think that's what's called. Yeah, it starts out where he's like where he's in other people's dreams, and it's cutesy and whatnot. People are like people that he doesn't know are recognizing him because they're like, I just had a dream about you. And then all of a sudden, like it turns into like we're in the dream, he's killing them. So then everybody turns, the whole world like turns against him, and he hasn't even done anything. Like it's not something he can control. And there's not a ton of original ideas, and that one certainly seems like something that it was original and how it was told and the execution. It was I liked it quite a bit.
It's awesome.
So
Check it out.
yeah,
Well, I guess we
pretty
want
much.
to call out our sponsors. Like, thanks again to Great
Tell
White
him,
Pottery
tell
for
him, Jason, where can they get a mug like this?
go on Facebook, find Great White Pottery.
Hmm.
Also, like and subscribe the New Ogden Cinema Facebook and YouTube pages.
Hmm.
We've got some great content up there. Like, obviously, if you found this, you can find some of our short films and trailers and all sorts of other great content on there. Uh, there. Oh, uh, you know, like we want it to be more inclusive as well. So if there are other filmmakers, like if you want to reach out to New Ogden Cinema at gmail.com and say, hey, I'd love to chat. We'd love to get other perspectives that aren't just Ryan. I mean, they're pretty damn good perspectives, but it is
Got a
good.
handle on
Yeah, it really ties the room together. But it'd be good to have. It'd be great. We've got some guest stars coming up, so look for that. And yeah, till
it.
next time, just keep making it happen and keep putting the pen to the paper.
Hmm.